Good morning and welcome to the Newport News Church of Christ. We're glad that you're here. Welcome you to our assembly this morning, to our Bible study. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 7 as we conclude our study of the Sermon on the Mount. There's been 12 lessons where we've broken down the Sermon on the Mount into 12 different lessons. And so today is the 12th lesson, and we kind of end our section of the Sermon on the Mount. Realize the Sermon on the Mount is pretty comprehensive study as it begins in chapter 5 and goes through chapter 6 and now into chapter 7. And so we've been just taking the Sermon on the Mount in little subsections so that we can really focus in and catch the teachings. Jesus did a lot of teaching and preaching in that whole sermon that flows from chapter 5 through 7. Remember, that was all in one sitting that he talked to these people and shared this in one sitting. This is not several different occasions, but this is all one setting that Jesus did that. And so, but for us to kind of digest it, we've broken it down into little subsections so we could take and capture in each section what Jesus is saying to us. And so we'll be in the final section as we cover chapter 7, and we'll be dealing with chapter 7, verses 13 to 29 this morning. All right, so we're in chapter 7. On the Sermon on the Mount. And as we look at it, the title of the lesson, Sermon on the Mount 12, How to Stay on the Narrow Road. How to stay on the narrow road. The second rule of thermodynamics is that energy will take the path of least resistance. Energy will take the path of least resistance. Now, for an example, a river that is flowing, does a river go through the mountain or does it go around the mountain? The river will go around the mountain. It doesn't go through the mountain. Now we look at fantastic sites like the Grand Canyon. That was, and that took thousands and thousands of years for water to cut through that and create the Grand Canyon. And we see other great wonders of the world where it's taken years for water to cut through that and to create that. But for the most part, the second rule of thermodynamics is that energy will take the path of least resistance. It will go around the mountain rather than go through the mountain. We will often take this approach in our lives as well. We want things to be easy. Do we choose the hard things in life the hard way, or do we choose the easy way? Easy way. If you have a choice, and sometimes the easiest way is, might be if it gets you to the same result, doesn't cost anything. Sometimes the easier way of doing something is better. Over time, technology and different things have come along to give us an easier way that we don't have to, in certain areas, we don't have to plant crops the old way where you have to hook up a mule or an ox and put this harness around you and sit there and go behind this thing. The steel plow came about, and then John Deere and different people McCormick made different machines that now you could get rid of all the farm hands and one person could get in this tractor and drive it down and make the furrows to plant. And then during the harvest time, you used to have whole people go out there and harvest. Now there's one guy gets on a harvester. You got one guy driving the harvester, one guy driving the truck that everything dumps into. So two people can harvest the whole field. So over time, technology has done things to make it easier. So if you have a choice today and we look at things and you've got technology, yeah, I'm going to choose the easy way. I'm going to let's do it that way. Let's not do it this way. So in life, we tend to take the easier approach. But sometimes in life, the easiest way is not always the best way. Sometimes the easiest way of doing things may mean that you're cutting some corners or you're leaving some things out. So the easiest way sometimes is good, but sometimes the easiest ways may not always be the best for us and the best way to do things. Many of Jesus' teachings ran against the cultural norms of his day. Many of the things that he says, all throughout the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus has been breaking through some of these cultural norms. And the way you know that Jesus is breaking through norms is because he says, now you heard it say back in the day, back in the generations, y'all have done it this way, but this is what I'm saying. And so we heard that, and he did that, like you heard it say, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Hey, he gets me, I got to get him back. Jesus says, no, this is what I'm saying. Love your enemies, pray for them. And so they're like, what? Do what? This goes against the conventional wisdom of his day. This goes through everything that they had known. They had known, hey, he gets you, man, it's all right. He gets my eye, I'm going to take his eye. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that revenge type of thing. Jesus said, no, that's no longer any good. That's no good. You have to love your enemies. You got to pray for them. You got to pray for your enemies. Love them. Pray for them that despitefully use you and abuse you. So that was Jesus going against the cultural norms of his day. Jesus would say in Matthew chapter 19 and verse 30, many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. So basically, there were those in Jesus' day who always wanted to be first, always put themselves at the head of the line, make sure they was first, make sure they was seen, make sure they was present. And so Jesus is telling the people, yeah, there are a lot of them that'll be first, but what? They're going to be last. And those who are last, what Jesus said, I'm going to make them first. Those who got pushed aside, those who got ran over, that got kicked to the side, they got left to the last, Jesus said, they're going to be first. And those of you that in your life, your thing was always to be first, even to run over other people to be first, he says, you're going to be last. So that was Jesus going against the cultural norms of his day. In Matthew chapter 20 and verse 26, Jesus said, whoever wants to be great among you shall be your servant. Goes against the cultural norms. The norms in that day, even the norms of today. If you want to be great people have people doing what? Serving them. Great people always have the president. Does he have a bunch of people to serve him? Yeah. He's got people running around anything he needs, serving him. He walks off Air Force One. There are people there saluting him, and there's somebody there holding the door open for the car. There's somebody driving the car, somebody flying the helicopter. People, does the president have to get up and make statements about what's going on in his administration? No, he has a press secretary. That person goes into the bullpen with all the reporters there, chomping at the bit to ask all the tough questions. The president doesn't stand there and take all the, now and again, he will do a press conference where he will stand in there and make his statement and take some questions, but not as a regular. The press secretary does that on a regular basis, goes in there and says what the president's thinking and what his viewpoint is, and takes the tough questions and speaks for the president. So people today that are of power have people that serve them. People that serve them. Jesus says, whoever, if you really want to be great, guess what? You'll be the servant. You won't necessarily be looking for people to serve you. If you want to be great, now in Jesus' viewpoint, in Jesus' economy, the great people are those who do what? They serve, not seek to be served. Now, did Jesus prove this in his life? In John chapter 13, he did that. When his disciples had come together and had their meal together, afterward, Jesus got up, did what? Girded himself with a towel and got down on his knees on the floor and washed all 12 of those guys' dusty, dirty feet. No great. And then Jesus says, do you know what I've just done to you? Do you know what I've just done to you? And I watched and Peter wants to take it to the extreme. No, Lord, no, you ain't gonna do this to me. Jesus said, if I don't do this, you don't have no part of me. Okay, Jesus, if you're gonna wash my feet, give me a whole bath, Peter. That's not the point. I'm not giving you a bath, Peter. It's a sign of submission and servitude that I will sit there and wash your feet. Now, you have to understand the cultural norms and traditions of that day. The kind of footwear people wore, open, more kind of sandal, dusty, hot, dusty roads, not pavement, not concrete, not cement, hot, dusty roads. You walking around all day, guess what? Your feet get dusty and dirty. Now, one of the things that would happen, you would come to somebody's house. It was customary for them. You would come in for them to sit down and provide a basin for you to be able to wash your feet and clean yourself up and refresh yourself before you enter their home. You know, we still kind of do it today when people come over. We say, hey, take your shoes off, leave them at the door. Some people even have a basket at my house. I have basket. Hey, if you want something to put on, hey, I got plenty of shoes and house shoes and sandals, whatever. You can slide it. If you just need something on, you can do that. But most people say, hey, I don't want the dust, the dirt from the outside to be tracked all in my house. Take your shoes off at the door and come in. And so the custom there was to provide a place for people to be able to take your sandals off, rinse themselves off, and refresh themselves before they came into your house. Yes, Brother Emmett? Okay. Okay, so, all right, the question is, since Jesus did that, wash the feet, yeah, and why don't we do it today? Now, growing up, my daddy told me, like down in Florida, his father was a member of a Baptist church. They call themselves the Foot Washing Baptists. And so on certain evenings, their night services, they would actually do that. They would get there and wash. They call it the foot washing service, right? And so they actually did that. Now, the thing we have to ask ourselves, is Jesus in his example telling us to do exactly what he said by washing the feet? No, the issue is not the foot washing. The example is what? The service, the servitude. The example is the mentality. Look at the culture of his day. The culture of his day, that would have been a custom of his day, you know, for people to come in and be able to wash their feet when they came into your home, you know, to make themselves, to rinse the dirt of the road off and to have a place where you do it. You know, how many of you have been to some restaurants where they have the little bowl and they bring the bowl out and has some lemon juice in there and you put your fingers in there and they provide a towel for you to wash your hands? Those are customary type of things. So now if we slide that over into our day, Jesus is telling us the same thing, what he did for them by doing that. He himself, most of the time, they will provide that for you to be able to do that for yourself, to take care of that. Jesus goes a step further. Not only does, you know, he come out with the basin, but he himself, he was taking that lowly position by he himself getting down, putting a towel on, and he himself actually performing that service of washing their feet. So not only does, you know, it would be customary for you to provide an area and provide the water and stuff for people to do it for themselves. But not only does Jesus do that for himself, but Jesus actually gets down there and does it himself and actually washes their feet. So he takes that and shows that, hey, this is about service, not about actually washing the feet. You know, now, if we wanted to do that and wash each other's feet, but that's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying that we should do the service part of it. Yes, Brother John. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. But the thing that Jesus wants us to catch is not necessarily the foot washing. He wants us to catch the act of service. That was the thing he's demonstrating, is that he did the service, that he was willing to get down and do something that you know, and that's why Peter and them guys looked at Jesus in such shock, because who did they call? What was their term for Jesus? Master, Rabboni, master, teacher. So in any place, do you expect your teacher? That was like me today. I'm a teacher. So for me, an act of service for my students, they need a pencil. I get a pencil, and I have a barrel in my classroom of pencils. They're brand new pencils. They're not sharpened. but for me to get that pencil and to go sharpen it for him and bring it to him, that's an act of service. And so Jesus is willing to do little bitty small acts that nobody would expect you to do, because he could certainly say, hey, I'm the master, I'm the teacher. Wash your own feet. I'm not washing your feet. You wash your own feet. Yes. Yes. And so that he's showing that distinguishing factor. He's showing love, and he's showing that by this, Jesus said, will all men know that what? You are my disciples. So that's what he's showing. But yeah, well, let's not get stuck here. Let's move on. Sister Simona, you had some. Okay. So yeah, anyway, so Jesus breaks through the cultural norms by doing things that are not necessarily the easiest thing, not necessarily the convenient thing, not necessarily the thing that people would expect, but Jesus breaks through the cultural norms of his day. And perhaps the best example of this comes at the end of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 7, 13 through 19. Jesus, some of the things we see is that we like the idea, a lot of us like the idea of being popular. A lot of people in this world today like the concept of democracy. Certainly our country, the United States, is built on the idea of democracy, where the majority rules. If ever there's a dispute, we just take a vote and go with the majority. And so that's kind of what our country's built on. But can the majority ever be wrong? The majority can be wrong. They can be wrong. A lot of people, just because a lot of people want something or a lot of people like something, doesn't mean that it's right. It just means a lot of people like that particular thing, but it doesn't mean that the majority is not always right. And so, but in our world today, we believe in democracy. We believe in the majority rules, but the majority can't be wrong. So let's see what Jesus has to say in Matthew chapter 9, Matthew chapter 7, 13 through 29. We won't read the whole thing because we're going to look at it as we go along. So our first point is Jesus making that there are only two paths and there are only two gates. Let's look at Matthew chapter 7. Let's start at verse 13. Jesus says, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. So Jesus puts forth this particular truth in verse 13 and 14. There's only two gates in life. There's not three gates. I mean, in the world, there's only two gates. Just like in the garden, Jesus made two people, one male, one female. He didn't make them non-binary. That, hey, I don't go by either. I don't go by male or female. Don't call me these pronouns. I'm non-binary. All these different deviations that are out there today, Jesus did not create those. So we know those are man-made. Those are another creation. Those are deviation from the Almighty Creator. He made two. He made male. And then later on, as he saw that male, Adam, it was not good for him to be alone and not have any company, not have anything. They said they looked around. All the other animals had what? Mates. And they reproduced after their own kind. But for Adam, there was what? None. So then that's when he took Adam, put him to sleep. Out of Adam, didn't make another man. He made a woman to be his companion. So there's only two gates. And in life, there's only two gates. There's only two choices. There's either right, there's either wrong. There's not a third choice. There's not but in life, what a time we got. Well, there's the right way, there's the wrong way, and there's a kind of in between way. No, it's either right or it's either wrong. It's either black, it's white, it's in the light, or it's in the dark. That's ultimately, yes, we're a lot of times in the middle on some things. We facilitate between two opinions, whether we're going to lean this way or lean more that way. And some of us kind of hang in the middle. Sometimes we kind of lean more to the right and sometimes we lean this way. But really, truly, there's really only two ways. And that's what Jesus is saying. that there's only two gates in life. One gate, Jesus says, he describes one gate is wide. This is the easy way. This is the second law of thermodynamics. If you don't want any resistance in life, if you don't want to think, if you just want to go on automatic pilot, you don't want to have to worry about it, then that's the gate for you. This gate is broad, it's easy, it's pop. Everybody's going to be there. The majority is going to be there. It's the popular way to go. This is the way of least resistance, Jesus is saying. So that's the broad gate. It's easy, it's popular, it's the way of least resistance. You don't have to think to go down that gate. You don't have to make any decisions. All you have to do is just go for the ride. If you're a person that just wants to go for the ride, hey, how many times have you heard people like, look, I don't want to think about nothing. I don't want to think about nothing. Because to think means what? You have to, does thinking require some energy? Yes, Brother John. Yes, sir. As Brother John was saying, they want the broad way. They want the easy way. It's going to be popular. Anything you want, you can find it in the broad way. Anything you want to do, the purpose. Now, as we'll see later on, as in what we're talking about, of course, they're always going to say that everything they're doing is for who? Of course, everything they're doing is for God. Everything that they throw in their worship, everything they put in their worship, they're saying is for what? For God. But when you look at it, who's it really for? It's for them. It's for them because it's all things. We put all of this stuff into worship, but it all ends up being stuff that what? That we like, that we enjoy. My biggest thing is just go down this street. How many big, elaborate structures called churches do you see? Big arches, cathedrals. Why do you do all of that? Who do they say it's for? Who do they build them structures for? They say it's for God. Now, and so here's the thing. Here's the ridiculous thing about that. How are you going to impress God? How can you impress God? Brother Bob, we can build in a nice elaborate structure that has all of this and brick and ornate stuff. And then God says, look at the Grand Canyon. I just came from something. I looked at the Niagara Falls, all this massive water, this geological feature. They're like, wow, God says, and the Psalms even says that the world rings with nature. God is in everything. We just see his nature. We see it's great. Just sit at home at night, go to some place out in the country, go out in the Suffolk somewhere where there's no street lights and just sit there and look at the stars and contemplate the universe. And now think, can you ever build anything down here that God will say, oh man, that's really nice. Now we can impress each other. I could go, Brother Bob just did some work at his house, did some construction work. He told me about the work he's doing. Now I could come over to Bob's house and say, Bob, this is really nice. Cause I know, man, I can't do what Bob did. He just redid his whole front porch and I know the sweat and all that it took for him to do that and get that done and see that project through. I can be impressed by that. Cause wow, Bob, man, I couldn't have done this, man. Bob, this is really nice. I can be impressed by it. But is it going to impress God when he created the world? Not with his hands. How did he create it? He spoke it into existence. So how do we ever impress God? And the other point is, did God ever ask us to do that? Did he ever? What is God impressed with? He's impressed when man simply obeys and do what he says to do in our simplest, most humblest way. That's when God's really impressed. That's when God's really pleased with us, when we just obey the simple things, do the simple and the little things. We don't have to do a lot of elaborate things to impress God because we're not trying to impress him. He's done things that are way beyond anything that we could ever do down here. he's impressed. He's happy when we do the simple thing. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, if we are humble and obey, and we'll certainly bring that out as we get to the end of the lesson. So, that the first gate is the broad way, easy, popular, least resistance. The way of this gate leads to destruction. All right. Everything it leads to destruction, everlasting destruction. Despite this warning, though. This gate is still attractive to many. And despite this warning, many still choose this gate. And so Jesus says, hey, that gate, that broad gate leads to what? Destruction, everlasting destruction. He says at this gate, there's nothing good comes out of this gate, but what? People still choose that gate. You know, just like when we was growing up as kids, our parents told us that that's no good. What did we want? We wanted that. And sometimes in limited amounts, our parents had to let us go down some of them roads and bump our heads against the wall and stub our toes for us to turn around and realize, oh yeah, they were right. That's not the way I need to go. Yes. Yes. As Pat just said, reminded us about in the garden. Jesus, he gave them two ways. He says, you know, they had the tree of life was there. They could have ate the tree of life, lived forever. And then they had the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What did Jesus? The only thing God told them, they had all the other fruits to eat of. He said, don't eat of this one. And so later on, Satan was able to say, God said, you will surely die. And Satan came in and put the word not in there. You will not die. And then tempted her with the idea that God is holding something back from you. God, there's something. And so, and they tempted her to take of that. So despite the warnings, we warn people all the time about the two paths and the two ways of life. Guess what? The one that leads to destructive is still the most popular path. It's still the path that everybody wants to go down. And it wouldn't be popular if it wasn't attractive. It's attractive. It looks inviting. And a lot of things in life look inviting to us, look attractive to us. And we don't see the inherent danger. We don't see the inherent evil in those paths until what? It's too late. A lot of times you go down these paths, you go down these roads, and you get to a certain point, everything looks good while you're driving, but then all of a sudden you reach a path and you go like, oh, I've gone the wrong way. I mean, it happens to us when we're driving. You know, we'll take a path and like, okay, everything looks real good. And when do you usually discover you've gone the wrong way? When you don't discover it. Like, it'd be great if you discovered you was going the wrong way within a short period of time of going down there. Like if you could discover it within a mile or 2 miles and like, oh, I've gone the wrong way, and turn right around and get on back on the other way, you know. But, you know, this is pre-GPS. Now I'm talking pre-GPS because now you go down the wrong path, your GPS quickly says, hey, recalculating, finding you another route. And so you know, oh, I didn't gone off the path. I'm not going the way I'm supposed to be going. So your GPS kind of gives you a warning, let you know, hey, let's find you another route. Let's get you back where you're supposed to be going. But thinking about those days before we had GPS, and you go down the road and you think you're going down the right path, you know, it'd be nice to know you was on the wrong road within a few miles of going down that road. But a lot of times you're driving, and all of a sudden you hit a sign that says you're almost to here, or you're so many miles from that, and you realize I'm supposed to be going the other direction. You're like, oh man, I done been down this road an hour, 2 hours, and now you have to turn around, make all that way back the hour or whatever you've gone in the wrong direction, and then go in the right direction. So despite the warnings, the broad way and the wide way is still attractive, and still many people choose that gate. Yes, Sister Simone. Yeah, and that's a fantastic point you made. People that go down the wrong road take the wrong path. The longer you stay on the path, the harder it is to get off, even when somebody shows you you're going the wrong way. They can show you you're going the wrong way. They can tell you you're going the wrong way, but you've been going down that road, and now you get, you know, well, Everybody else I know went that way. Everybody else I know did it this way. And so it's hard for you to have it. It's really a thing of humility. It's pride. Man, I've been going this way for so long. And you mean I have to turn around? Now, in every other aspect of our life, we are willing to make that decision. You driving down the road, you're trying to go to the Outer Banks, but then you see a sign that says you're so many miles away from Richmond. I'm going the wrong way. I need to turn around and go the other wrong way. Now, you can keep going. Guess where you're going to end up? You're going to end up in Richmond. So you've got to just surrender your pride. You can get mad at yourself for whatever happened. Somebody told you the wrong way. You took the wrong way, but you just have to deal with it and say, look, if I want to get to the Outer Banks, I've got to turn this vehicle around and head back the other direction to get to the Outer Banks. If I stay on this road, I'm going to end up in Richmond. Still not the destination I want. I want the Outer Banks. I'm going to end up in Richmond. So now you have to make a choice. A lot of things in life, we make choices. We make financial choices. You had your money in this bank. And somebody comes up and says, hey, that bank is really not that good. You get better rates over here at this bank. What are we saying? Nah, that's okay. I'll keep the lesser rates over this bank. Do we do that? When somebody says, hey, this is better over here, they're giving you a little bit better, they're giving you more for your money, and you get this and you get this and this. Do we say, no, I'll stay with the inferior choice? No, somebody gives it. First thing we do, like, well, let me go check it out. We check it out, we read, we do the research, and we find out, hey, they're right. This one is better. They give me better rates on my banking and my checking account. I get a better, higher return on my savings account. And you look at it and you weigh it and you check it out and you make sure what they're saying is true. Guess what? You go pull your money and you go put it over here. So in every aspect of our lives, we're willing to do better and make better decisions. Big Mama lived in an old shack, didn't have no air conditioning. Do you say, well, because she lived in a shack with no air conditioning, that's how I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna live my life in a house with no. You got the ability to do better. You got money and you can get a better house and a better that. You don't live the way that they did. We don't live the way our ancestors did 100, 200 years ago because what? We have better choices than they did now. So we take advantage of them. We use them. But we do that in every aspect of our life except religion, except when it comes to faith. We will do better financially. We have better choices. We have more knowledge. We will use that and make sure our money's invested, our money's in the right place financially. We'll do it with our jobs. We'll do it with the way we live. You don't live the way. You don't drive the same car your grandmother didn't drive. You got better cars available to you now. You don't say, well, she drove an old Buick Electra 225. I'm a driver. Electric. First of all, they don't even make electric 225s anymore. If you get one, it's an antique. So we have better cars that an electric 225 didn't get that great gas mileage. So we get a better car that gets better gas mileage and does better. And we're about to probably flip over and eventually go electric. So we keep up with technology and other things. Do you still use the same phones your mom and them use? No. We're not even using landlines anymore. I have one at the house. Don't use it. Nobody calls me on it. Anybody that wants me calls me on my cell phone, my cellular device. It's there. I have one there for work and for backup. If the cell towers go out, I can still get on that and get a call out. I do that. The only people that probably even call me on that is my daughter. Whenever it rings, we know, oh, okay, it's our daughter calling us on that line, because maybe she didn't catch us on our cell line. But hardly anybody calls it. Most of the time we come home, guess what's on that phone? Guess what kind of calls we have on there? Spam, telemarketers. So I have a landline, but most people have gotten rid of it. Don't even have a landline, a hardwired phone. So we're willing to do better in all these other aspects of our lives. But when it comes to our faith, then when we go down the broad path and somebody tells you you're on the broad path, we're not willing to turn around and go what? We're not willing to do that. So let's get to this other path before we close. So There are those who want, so we've got the broad, where the only two paths. The one gate is wide, but the other gate is narrow. The way of this gate is small. This is the difficult way. This is the unpopular way. This is the way of maximum resistance. This is not the river going around the mountain. The second law of thermodynamics, energy will take the path of least resistance. This is the river going what? Through the mountains and over the mountain. This is the path. This is the harder path. This is it. You're not going around. You're not finding the easier route. This is, you see the mountain, guess what? You've got to climb over it. You got to go up and you got to go over it. This is the path that would cost more. Now, some people really don't want that in life. Like I said, there's a lot of people, they don't want to think. They don't want to make decisions. They want stuff just handed to them. Just hand it to me. I'll take it. I'm comfortable with it. I'll live with it. But in the end, when you stand before the Father, when you stand before the throne of God, you will have wished you made some decisions in life a little differently. But there's some people that don't want to do that because this is a more difficult way. Christianity is not a grocery list. We don't hand you a grocery list when you come out of the water of baptism and says, here's all the things you can do. Here's all the things you can't do. We don't do that to you. And if somebody has done that to you, they shouldn't have, because we do you a disservice if we do that. We've got to teach you to think. Paul said all things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. All of us are different. We come in different. So something that might bother you and might be a stumbling block to you may not be a stumbling block to me. But if I realize that it's a stumbling block to you, I've got to be aware of that, and I need to caution myself. But Christianity, we're always thinking. Paul says we're looking at what's going to be expedient, what's going to help us to develop and build ourselves up. Our desire is to be conformed in the image of Christ. We're trying to become more like Christ. So as we go through, we start to cut away things that don't look like Christ. And a lot of times those things that we cut away, we're willing to cut away some things that are good, that are okay. Like Paul said, all things are lawful. Paul was willing to get rid of some things that he could have done that would have been no problem. But when you look at it, it's like, well, that's not going to help me. That's not going to expedite. That's not going to speed up my growth of being in Christ. So we cut it away. And that's a different way of looking. The world say like, let me do as much as I can do. You only go around one time in life. You got to grab all the gusto. You got to get all you can get. You only go around once. You only live one time. Do everything you can do. Grab all the gusto you can get. That's the world's thinking. We look at, I'm willing to make some decisions. I'm willing to give up some things that are really lawful. I'm willing to give up some things that are, there's nothing wrong. They're not criminal. They're not immoral, but they're just not good for me because they're not going to help me to develop in the image of Christ. So I'm willing to let them go. It might be a simple thing. It's like, man, I just need to really cut back on my dependence on Pepsi. Man, I drink colas too much. This is not good for my health. And it's just, I can't do nothing unless I have one. It's an addiction. So I'm willing to cut that loose. Is there anything inherent or immoral with a Pepsi Cola? No. But you make that decision. It could be something as simple as that. I make that decision because this is going to be best for me. And so that's why the narrow gate, this is a difficult way. It's unpopular. Is everybody going to pat you on the back because you go down that way? They're going to talk about you. They're going to really look at, man, why are you, John? Why are you just in that church, man, when you can have everything you want? You can clap, you can praise. Brother John came in with his tambourine back in the day. Man, you can do your tambourine. We got choir. Anything you want, we've got it. Before the sermon is even preached at a lot of churches, you have a whole talent show before you even get to the sermon. The choir has done the A and B selection. The praise dancers have done a prance. The children's choir have done something. You got the Apollo. You got showtime at the Apollo before the minister even gets up to even bring you the word. And then when he gets up to bring you the word, he's been in his study, he or her out there. They've been in their study and studied, so many hours a week. You think they're going to cut their sermon short? just because all that other stuff took 2 hours. No, they ain't cut their sermon short. So that's everything built on pleasing what? Man. But when we look at pleasing God, we take the difficult way. We take the more popular way. It's the way of maximum resistance. The way of this gate leads to life eternal and life with God. Despite this promise, this gate is not attractive to many. Despite this promise, few will choose this gate. And we've got to close there. We've got to close there. Yes. Yes. Yep. And as a Christian, you've got to be willing. If you're one that depends on having the approval of a lot of people being around you doing the same thing at the same time, you're gonna be disappointed. Because on this gate, sometimes you're gonna be by yourself. You got to be strong enough to stand up and to persevere and know that in the end, like Jesus said, the first, they're going to be last. You might be last in this life, but when the Lord comes back, you'll be first and you'll be rewarded because you did things the hard way. You'll benefit. He'll reward you for that. You may not have been surrounded by people patting you on the back, going the same direction, but you'll be blessed in the end. All those people that did it the easy way, as if you keep reading on in Matthew chapter 7, all the way to verse 29, Jesus is going to say, I don't know you. Depart from me. Oh, but we did all these great things in your name. Jesus said, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. You workers of iniquity. You work evil. But they're going to claim they did a lot of stuff in Jesus's name. And Jesus is going to say, I really don't know you. Don't know who you are. So that's the crux of the lesson. You can go back and you got the outline. There's outlines out here if you need a copy with the questions on it, and you should have got it in your email today. But you go back and look at that Matthew chapter 7. It's a very thing that we quote and use a lot in our teachings here in the church, in the Lord's church. But really get that, because it's a more difficult path. It's harder. It's not popular. On the broad way, you can turn this way, that way. You can do anything you want. When you're on a narrow road, have you ever been on a narrow road where it's just barely 2 cars can pass? Can you turn around? No, you can't. And sometimes you're on a narrow road. The only way is you got to back all the way back out of that road and get someplace where you can turn around. There ain't no way to turn around. When you're on that narrow road, you going that way. There ain't no turn around. Ain't no way of turning and going this way. You're on the broad way, you can turn around, you can go backward, you can go forward, you can do all that stuff. But when you're on the narrow way, it's pretty much one way to think, one way to go. And so we've got to choose that way. Let us adjourn right now, and we'll get ready for our worship service that'll start in about 25 minutes.